Well, we're back, and this is our last study for this week. There won't be a series of studies for next week. You have them in your book, but we're not going to do the film on Sunday night this week. I won't be doing this next week. Actually, I'll be fishing down with the guys in the Carabel next week. At any rate, we won't have the film Sunday night. And we'll do it the following Sunday night, and then we'll pick up back with these devotionals. Let me know what you think about them, if they're helpful to you, or if they're not. Don't want to use up this time if it's not being effective for anybody involved. In the film, the author took us to the city of Aphrodisias. I don't know if I said that correctly. It's named after the goddess, the love goddess, the fertility goddess of Aphrodite. And I guess you can imagine what kind of worship that was, that kind of temple that was, if you just understand the word aphrodisiac and the words that come from that. It was that kind of thing. We're not going to go into that. The stadium there is where he took us to. He didn't talk so much about the temple that was there. That temple, what I have read, became a church about 500 years after Christ. So the paganism went away. Christianity came in and used the pagan temple. I don't know if I would have done that or not, but at any rate, they did, according to what I read in history. But the stadium that he took us to, he says it's a dramatic reminder of the passion with which we are to train, to compete, and fight to run our discipleship, our walk of discipleship with Jesus with all of our heart, soul, and strength. But then he said, that's not all. The stadium is also a reminder of the crowds of faithful followers of God who have gone before us. And that's where he sends our focus this week, talking about who is in that great cloud of witnesses. And he turns us to Hebrews chapters 11 and 12. And he says, read the text, read it more than once so that you can take in more of its significance, more of its meaning. Then he asked the question, which great men or women of faith mentioned in the Hebrews stands out to you as you read? And I know that you've probably heard hundreds of sermons about these heroes of faith, and they're good lessons. They're good motivation or motivating lessons to encourage us to be like these ones that God has pulled out of the text and says, these are great heroes of faith. It would be difficult to pull out a favorite and say, this is my favorite, a favorite or two, and say, these are my favorites. You can go to any one of the stories and you can see what they did because of their trust in God, because of their passion for God. And they're all pretty impressive. I was particularly always amazed with Rahab and her faith. Here's a woman who, considering her circumstance, she should never have come to faith. Her name shouldn't be in the Bible, yet she is mentioned as being in the lineage of Jesus in the book of Matthew. She was not raised in a God-fearing nation. She was not raised by a God-fearing family. There was nothing in her life that would suggest that she would ever come to faith. Most likely, she's called Rahab the harlot. Most likely, she was sold into prostitution by her father when she was no longer or no more than a teenager. She was most likely used and abused by every man with whom she came in contact. I can imagine that she had a very dark picture of the world. All she had was the knowledge that out there on the horizon, she could see him from the walls of Jericho. Out there on the horizon was a distant God, and he was doing something that no other God had ever done or could ever do. I wonder sometimes, who are the Rahabs today? Who are the ones who are looking beyond the darkness of their horrible world and looking on the horizon for this God who is unlike any other God? Who are the women who are desperately looking for a way out of whatever hell they're living in? And what part do you and I play in that? Are we not here for them? Are we not here for those people to help them, bring them from that darkness and to bring them to a place where they are shown their value in God? How am I showing the Rahabs of today that there is a true God who is genuinely concerned about him or her? Something else that strikes me in this list of heroes in Hebrews chapter 11 is the list of the unnamed. We got a lot of famous names there: Abel, Noah, Abraham, Sarah, Moses, Rahab. He says in verse 32, "And what more shall I say? For the time would fail me to tell of Gideon and Barak and Samson and Jephthah and David and Samuel and the prophets, who through faith subdued kingdoms, worked righteousness, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the violence of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, out of weakness were made strong, became valiant in battle, turned to flight their armies of the aliens. Women received their dead from life, their dead raised to life again, and others were tortured, not accepting deliverance that they might obtain a better resurrection. Still others had trial of mockings, scourgings, yes, of chains and imprisonment. They were stoned, they were sawn in two, they were tempted, they were slain with the sword. They wandered about in sheepskins and goatskins, being destitute, afflicted, tormented, of whom the world was not worthy." Who are these people? What are their stories? How many hundreds of thousands of them are there? You remember that time when Elijah was hiding from Jezebel? He thought that he was the only one serving God, and he kind of whined about that, and God kind of gave him a rebuke, I think, and told him there are 7,000 who have not bowed the knee to Baal. 7,000 among the Israelites. Now, Israelites were people who had really separated themselves from God as a whole, but God said there are 7,000 among these people who had separated themselves from God. There are still 7,000 who have not bowed the knee to Baal. How many other children of faith were there in the time of Esther? We have Esther's story. God focused in on that because of how he used her in that plan. But how many others were there like her? Yesterday, actually, now it's the day before yesterday, I was driving to work and here at the office, and I don't know why, but I was thinking about that song taken from Psalm 137, "By the Rivers of Babylon." I heard that song for the first time as I guess I don't know what you call it, pop or rock song sung by Boney M, I think it was. And I was in Russia at a shop, and that song was playing over the intercom, "By the Rivers of Babylon, where we sat down, and there we wept while we remembered Zion. They carried the wicked, they carried us away captivity, and they required of us a song. How can we sing King Alpha's song in a strange land?" The people that are the subject of that song, who are being tortured and doing the singing, they were being taunted by their tormentors. Babylon had taken them captive, and the Jews had been known for centuries as being the ones who have the true and living God. There are no other gods. And their faith was being mocked. Sing us a song about this great protective God of yours. Tell us again how he's the only true and living God, as they poked them with their pitchforks or swords or whatever it was and drove them into captivity. These people, those who maintain their faith, are among, in my mind, this cloud of witnesses that the Hebrew writer speaks of in Hebrews chapter 12. They're watching us as we run our race. One day, the author pointed out, one day we'll be there. We'll die, and we'll be looking at those who come behind. But these witnesses that are there who are watching us, who are they? And what are they thinking? What brought them to that place? What kind of faith allowed them to be among the witnesses? Faith for them was not some simple, as he points out here, not simply a verbal assent. Oh yeah, I believe in God, or I believe there's a God. It's not a rational belief. You can point out the evidences. There is God because creation has to be real, evolution has to be alive, because it doesn't make sense otherwise. So you have a rational belief in God. Well, that's good, but faith is more than that. Faith is something that it has to be what our life is. Faith must be the race that we run, and we run it with passion to obtain the goal, to achieve the goal. How much effort, how much passion, how much zeal for God can we see in these witnesses, this great cloud of witnesses who watch us race? And then, as the author points out in question 2, I think it's question 2, what can we learn from them? What can we learn from these stories about what it means to run the race with Jesus, and why must we do this? He points us to Hebrews 12 and verses 2 and 3, and he asks what motivated Jesus to do what he did. What motivated Jesus, and what did he do? And he asked, what effect should this example have on us? Let's look at the text. Hebrews 12, verse 2. Let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter. The word perfecter there means finisher, the completer of our faith. Who, for the joy that was set before him, this is why he did it, who, for the joy that was set before him, he endured the cross. There was a trophy, there was a goal, there was a joy, which would have been the salvation of souls. For that purpose, he endured what? The cross. Despising, thinking against the shame that he had to go through, and now has sat down at the right hand of God, or at the right hand of the throne of God. For consider him who endured such hostility from sinners against himself, lest you become weary and discouraged. He says, for consider. The word there is the word analogizomai, big old long ugly word, basically means analyze. Take time in your faith, in your life, in your walk, in your studies, take time to analyze what Jesus did. And do the same thing with these other stories that we have, the faith heroes of Hebrews chapter. Analyze what they did so that we don't become weary and discouraged in our souls. These are not just memory verses given to us in the New Testament. They're given to us for a reason. They're to energize our faith so that we can run the race as God would have us to. He says in question 4, if we have a mental picture of life being like a marathon, that we are running in front of the great runners of God's race of faith who have gone before us, how might that change how we live and the effort we expend running our race? In other words, he's saying, don't just see this as a list of names. See who they are. See what they did. See their run, how they ran, and do what you can to run like that. And when we think about literal athletes that you see on TV, we think about, man, what an arm he has. He can throw that ball this far, or he can pitch this fast, or we might think that man can really shoot the ball. Like him or not, we are amazed when we watch Usain Bolt run. We are amazed at his speed. Like him or not, LeBron James, he has a take charge leadership. There are certain talents that he has, certain abilities that he has, and we talk about those. So imagine this great cloud of witnesses. They're watching you, us, run. What are they talking about? When they look at you, when they watch you run your life of faith, what extraordinary ability are they saying, man, look at the way she does that? I encourage you again to read the reflection questions. He says, which witness or hero of faith mentioned in Hebrews chapter 11, or a spouse, parent, brother, sister, child, friend who has impacted your life, which one cheers you on as you remember how faithfully he or she ran the race that God has set out. What about that person's faith challenges you or encourages you? Write that down, and write down that person's example, what it teaches you about how to emulate what to emulate in your walk with Jesus. Then he asks, in what ways does remembering the life and the example of that person help you to run more faithfully? What kind of witness are you to other believers? What is it about the way that you run your race that can help others run their races for Jesus Christ? And then he says, what things hinder or entangle you to seek you to run more faithfully for Jesus? What must you do to eliminate these things from your life? We really need to take these questions seriously. Have a journal. If you don't want to talk about it publicly and discuss it with fellow Christians so that you can benefit from each other's strengths and weaknesses, then make a journal so that you're at least honest with yourself. We need to at least be honest with ourselves. We need to be honest with each other. When we need to have that kind of community here at our congregation, our family. But that takes time. That takes building. But it starts with you being honest with yourself. And I want to encourage each of you, myself included, to do that. He says, finally, speak to God about your admiration for faithful believers around the world and who put their lives on the line because they believe in Jesus, and ask him to give you an unquenchable desire to demonstrate your commitment to the Lordship of Jesus. Well, that's what I've got for today, and I hope this is helpful in you going through your Bible study, and I look forward to further opportunities to do this in the coming weeks. I don't know that I will be able to do one each day. I'm going to try. I'm going to be doing studies myself each day, but whether I'll have time to actually put it on the video, I don't know. But thank you for participating in this, and we'll see you on Sunday. God bless. Love you all.